By now you must be super tired of drawing boxes and rectangles. So this week I'm going to show you how to use the same technique to create your own borders and frames. Coming right up. Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Buziak of AON Celtic Art. I'm a published author and a Celtic artist teaching modern techniques and ancient art. I've been teaching this method from my website for the last 25 years and as well in my book, Creating Celtic Knotwork by Dover Publications. Before we get started today, make sure you subscribe to my channel and ring that little bell so you're notified of new tutorials when they come out. Celtic art has such wonderful elements of symmetry and balance, and it's these things that make it so versatile. You can use it in a decorative manner where it's stitched or stenciled or drawn to accent something else, or you can use it on its own to create really complex, exciting designs. Today I'm going to show you how to use that grid technique that we've been working on to create border and frame designs. They're super useful, and again, it just uses the same technique that we've already been working in with the grid patterns. So make sure you go to my website, download a sheet of that AON dot paper. I'll put the link below in the comments, and let's get started. I'll start us off with a very basic border pattern. I just want to prove that the grid technique still works when you're not working in a perfect square shape. I'm going to be going through this example a little faster than I have in past videos. If you're having trouble following, all the techniques I'm using in this border design can be found in the basic Celtic knot video. So if you're getting lost, maybe go back and do a quick review on that. For this border, I'm going to make 8 big dots across by 3 big dots high. Start the same way as you have in the previous weeks. So find a small dot, make your tipped over tic-tac-toe pattern, and continue those across the whole design, skipping the ones that are crossed off on that outside border or that fall outside of your square. Connect your knot lines in each of the 4 corners, and then add your bends or elbows along the horizontal. To begin weaving, choose an intersection. I'm going to choose that top left one and erase it in one direction. So I've created an over, and the arrow shows which direction I'll be going as I follow this strand. If the first one was an over, the next will be an under, and then an over, and then under, over, and continue the pattern until the whole knot has been woven. Like our square designs, even if it's a rectangle or an odd shape, the grid technique will always work out. I'll show you in the next example how to do a little more unusual shape, or to do a continuous design that doesn't have ends. So whereas the previous design was a border, this one is a corner piece that could continue on to become a fully enclosed frame. Like the border we just did, each side is only 3 big dots wide, so we could continue these as far as we wanted to make it as high or wide as needed. In my example here, I'm going to cap off those ends just so I can enlarge it and make things a little more easy to see for you guys. As we did in the fancy Celtic knot tutorial, I'm going to add some walls to break up the pattern and make our design a little more interesting. Don't forget our golden rule, always big dot to big dot, so we're crossing off that little dot and changing the pattern. You can put your walls where you want in your design or follow what I have here. Next, add all your tic-tac-toes to all the small dots within your pattern that aren't crossed off by the walls or on your outside bounding box. Add your corners to the design. You'll see with my example here, I have a few extra because of where I placed my walls. Connect the remaining loose ends using your bends or elbows. If you're following my design, it should now look something like this. Begin weaving your over and unders, and here we have the final design. For the sake of comparison, I'll just include here a copy of this corner if we hadn't placed any walls in. So this would be the plain corner design. Of course, in my example, I capped the ends of this knot, so I made just a standalone corner design. So I'll just zoom out here and show you how it would look if it had been a whole frame that we were working on. So without capping the ends, you see how the pattern would have just continued on naturally. Each of the 4 corners would have the same walls added to create a nice symmetrical design. And your borders and frames don't have to be perfect squares or rectangles either. You see in this example here, I've made like a little jut out in that inside corner. So you can manipulate that boundary box by quite a bit. Just make sure you're always going from big dot to big dot, even if you're doing these little jut outs. If you're looking for more ideas and examples that you can work through, I've created a worksheet this week that you can download and print out if you like. It's just got a random selection of different designs that you can work through. If you like these worksheets and find they're helpful, please leave me a note in the comments below so I know and I can make you guys more.
Something to remember is that this grid technique is a tool, and like any tool, can be manipulated and used in your own personal way to create your own unique designs. The easiest way to do this is to change the scale of your dot paper. You can enlarge it and you can shrink it down, and this will change the density of the knots that you're creating inside. By using two different densities or scales, you can create a unique original design that doesn't look quite as manufactured or static as doing it all in the same density can. I'll show you in these next examples some different ways that you can do that with your work.
Let's go back to our original border. I'll just strip those knots out so we can see the grid itself a little more easily. This outside border is about an average distance apart for knots for how I like to work. To fill that inner space, I've decided I want to add another thin kind of border and then a central design. I could make that thin border the same density as my outer border, but I've decided I'm going to shrink it down and make it a little more tight or dense. To do this, I shrunk down the dot paper and then clipped out the portion that I would need, and I just slide it into the other design. If you look, now you can see that outside border has a lot of space between your dots, and then the inside one, it's a lot more tight, so that's going to make your knot tight as well. If you're shrinking down your grid and you're finding it too hard to work in the smaller spaces, keep in mind that you can always work large and then scale it down after using your computer or a photocopier. So don't drive yourself crazy if you're making it smaller. You can always do it after. I'm just showing you how to do it beforehand so you can see the comparison in the dot spacing. Now to fill that central space. I'm going to make this a little fancier design so it can be sort of the highlight of the piece. Again, I'm going to make the dot spacing a little bit different. It's kind of closer to that outside border, but still a little bit of a variety between all three. Because the center image is going to be the feature of the whole piece, I want to add some walls to it, just what's a little more interesting. So I'll end up with kind of a detailed outer border, a little twist, and then a more complex design in the center. Now that I have all the design areas laid out, I'm going to do that twist first. A border design made by two big dots wide or high makes the most simple Celtic knot around. It's basically just a twist. Then I go on to the center design, the feature of my piece. Now I want to talk a little bit about this for a moment. Going back to our common problems tutorial, you may remember I spoke about the different thicknesses you can make your knots. So in the example here, I have line thicknesses that are very close to the dots, and then I have other ones that are an average, and then lastly you can make them quite a ways away from the dot, and this will make your knot lines either really skinny or thick and chunky. So not only can we change the distance between the dots, but we can change how we fill that space as well by the thickness of our knot lines. Going back to our example, you'll see that for the twist, I've done sort of an average thickness for my knot lines. However, for my feature knot in the center, I've made it quite thick, so it really stands out as being different than that twist. Adding our old border back, you see that now I have quite a variety between the three different components. The outer border has an average distance between the dots and an average thickness to the line work. Next we have the twist, which has a smaller distance between the dots, but still an average thickness to the line work. And then our center design, which has about an average distance between the dots, but I've made really thick knotwork strands. If I remove the dots, you can see our standalone pattern now without the grid paper in behind it. When I was planning the overall design, you probably saw that I left a small space in between each of the different border components. If you look at a lot of historical Celtic art, such as in the old manuscripts like the Lindisfarne Gospels or the Book of Kells, you'll notice that this is a technique they use a lot, separating their different design areas with this border, so it can give your own work a very nice authentic touch to include it. To finish off my design, I'll just add that outside one as well, and that completes the whole design. So as you can see, by changing the scale of your dots, so there's different spaces between them in the different components, as well as changing the knot thicknesses, can really add variety to a piece. And I think this final image is stronger than it would have been had I used the same grid pattern through all the different components. If you want to work through this design on your own as a little bit of practice, I'll add another worksheet below to the comments. You can just download it if you want and use it as a practice sheet.
And that's how you can take this grid pattern and create your own unique frame and border designs. I hope you find this useful, but again, if you have any questions or you run into trouble, just write them in the comments below and I'll try to answer as best I can. Before you leave, don't forget, subscribe to my channel and ring that bell so you're kept up to date on new tutorials when they come out. My book, Creating Celtic Knotwork, covers this as well as many more techniques. The link for that is below if you're interested. And if you'd like to support my website or my channel, please consider joining one of my Patreon tiers. There's tons of different perks that I send folks, and I really appreciate all the support and help that folks give. It helps keep Celtic art alive as a modern day art form. That's it for this week, everybody. Bye!